So one of the things I love about being a dungeon master is creating good villains for my characters to interact with and come up against as they go on their adventures. And there's always that one big bad enemy guy hanging out in the background, pulling all the strings, manipulating events and other NPCs and characters themselves to achieve their overall objective. And so when I create these enemies, these villains, these BBEGs, big bad enemy guys, I have three rules that I have to follow. The first rule is that any main villain has others that do their bidding, whether it be henchmen, minions. There should even be lieutenants and generals within the ranks, just to give you an idea, not saying that they need to have some sort of military hierarchy, but they need to have people that do their bidding. Another thing about these main villains is that they have to be able to avoid direct conflict with the player characters. The characters may want to rush straight into a battle with the main villain, so that can create potential problems. One, the villain, if they're more powerful, which they should be at the start, could easily wipe out an entire party of characters who don't know any better. So by giving the villain an exit strategy or some sort of alternate win condition so that the players aren't wiped out right away is very helpful. And finally, the villain needs to be able to pull strings with others outside of those in their direct circle or their circle of influence. And there is one monster that I find fits all three of these and can also fit into almost any style of campaign you want to play. Whether it's a dungeon crawl, a sprawling sandbox overland exploration, political intrigue, horror, anything that you want to play, this monster can fit the bill. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Hey guys, my name is Shane from BeholdGamers.com, and today I want to talk to you about hags, especially for those of us that want to use hags as the main antagonist of a campaign. I've actually used hags in almost every single campaign that I've run since 5th edition has come out. The reason for that is hags are very multi-dimensional when it comes to motivations, schemes, plans, all kinds of different things. Ultimately, hags just want to see good fail. And with that being the case, there are many ways that you can go about that. They can manipulate a small town. They can be influential over politics. They can create sprawling dungeons from magic and lure adventurers into their grasp. And they can travel the planes and extend their evil influence and reach far beyond the material realm. So let's take a look at the three things that I brought up earlier that I think makes a good bad guy, a good main antagonist for your adventure. And how do hags fit into each of those? So first off, hags can easily get others to do their bidding either through manipulation, making of slanted deals with others, whether they be NPCs or players themselves. I think a lot of times we think of hags as these vicious, disgusting, just vile creatures, but they're also scheming and always planning. And one of the things I love to do with hags is have them influence characters, player characters specifically, in unexpected ways. Somehow a player character can be influenced to do the bidding of a hag, and they don't even realize it. And once they see the extent of what they've done and learn what happened because of them, it then turns the campaign on its side, and now they can either try to exact revenge on the hag, or maybe you could even send them on the run from the law if maybe what they did is just so vile and vicious that they didn't realize exactly what they were doing, but somebody caught on. Maybe the hag even betrayed them. Maybe it can turn into a campaign of betrayal and redemption. The player characters can also run into henchmen or minions of the hag who have motivations of their own that are maybe trying to free themselves of the clutches of the hag. Maybe they aren't. Maybe they are just freely associating with this evil creature and the player characters need to find a way to overcome the challenges that this lower level enemy has before finally reaching the pinnacle, finding out who is at the top of these schemes and misdeeds that the players have been encountering as they go through an adventure. Which brings us to the second point that I made about main bad guys. How these big villains always try to avoid direct conflict. Hags can use other people to carry out their bidding. They can use the influence and manipulation tactics that they're so well known for to get others to do the bidding for them. They will send others to go out and face these characters that might be getting too close to finding out the overall scheme of what your campaign is leading up to. The hags can also have ways to travel the planes instantly. Hags have many ways of getting out of sticky situations, whether it be casting invisibility, traveling to a different plane of existence, or simply disguising itself to flee and change appearance. It's very easy for a hag to escape a situation where the characters might be able to turn the tables on them. So even a low-level party could defeat any main villain if you introduce the two. Anything can happen. But hags have abilities that allow them to leave these situations and somehow escape, therefore ending any conflict and having altered the win condition for the characters. And finally, one of the last things about main bad guys and villains in campaigns is that they should be able to pull strings and manipulate scenarios to their own benefit. And hags are especially good at that if you look at the lore and role-playing advice that's given. Hags are particularly manipulative creatures. And that's why I think they make such fitting main villains for any campaign. So what are some of the other reasons I think hags make perfect villains for a campaign? Well, let's take the example that I gave not too long ago. So what if your players end up killing your hag that you had planned as a main villain? Maybe you introduced them a little early in the story to try to create this sort of tension and conflict. Maybe the players didn't realize that it was the main villain of the story at all. What happens if they kill a hag? Well, it's written into the lore that hags are vengeful creatures that will try to seek out anyone who destroys one of their own, especially if they are a member of a coven. So if you kill a hag, her coven, her mother, grandmothers, aunties, will all come looking for whoever put down one of their own. And maybe that hag that they were introduced to no longer is the main bad guy, but maybe now there's a greater force at work. So maybe the hag that the player characters killed a little too early for your campaign wasn't the one that was leading the coven. And maybe they continue the work of the hag that has just been defeated. Another great feature of hags, and this is specifically from Volo's Guide to Monsters that I find useful, is something called hag metamorphosis. They specifically lay out that hags can change based on where they go, what their goals are. Maybe they become more powerful or move into a different type of climate or region, and they adapt and develop these new abilities and powers. One of the things that I think is important about any villain in any campaign, first off, I'm a firm believer that characters should meet the main villain of a campaign well before the campaign is on its way to a conclusion. There are many campaigns that I see where it ultimately leads up to the final conflict, and this is the first time they meet this bad guy. I actually love to introduce my main villains to the characters well before that moment arrives. Perhaps the characters don't even realize that they're meeting the main villain, but it's even more fun when they do. And there's nothing they can do to stop that villain from achieving the goals that they want to achieve. And now the players have to figure out a way to go out and stop this person who they know is doing evil, but they just can't defeat them yet. They need to find some sort of win condition to defeat this monster. And so as players progress in level, you can also change the nature of this hag. You can make them more powerful. You can give them new abilities that the players might not be expecting. I also always like to have spellcasters as my main villains when I run a campaign. And that's why I think hags are so useful, because there is a multitude of spells that they can cast just as written, or you can give them new abilities and spells. In fact, Volo's Guide to Monsters brings this up, They allow for dungeon masters to grant new spells and abilities to the hags as you see fit, based on maybe rituals or special circumstances that they might be able to transform other creatures or players or characters into these new forms to serve their purposes. So if you're looking to create a good bad guy or villain for your campaign, hags are always a good bet for me. I'm right now running 2 campaigns where a hag is actually a main villain in the story. One of them's a night hag, the other one's just a green hag right now. I'm going to have her morph into these more powerful versions of herself, and I've even created layers for these hags, and because any main bad guy wants to fight on their own turf, have that home field advantage. They're always more powerful whenever they can select the battlefield of their choosing, especially so close to home. And I'm very excited now that Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is out. I'm looking forward to creating a whole domain of dread specifically for a hag. I'm picturing something where she's maybe taken over a small village and surrounding areas and farms, and she now has complete control over these villagers to do her bidding as she sees fit in this new little realm that she has created for herself. So if you want to create your own hag as a villain, be sure to check out Volo's Guide to Monsters. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is also out now. I think that could be very useful, especially if you're trying to create a villain that is particularly powerful and manipulative over an entire realm of their own. So be sure to leave a comment down below telling me what you think are great villains for your own campaigns. And also be sure to like this video, it helps out the channel a lot. And as always, have fun, learn lots.
Oh! What is 2 plus 0?
2,
No, I mean 2 plus 0 next to it.
2.
No. I mean...
Did you get a natural 20?
Yes!
Oh, man. Okay, so you...
A natural 20 plus 7!
Oh my gosh. Okay,
Hey,
so you...
I worked so